Welcome back to another episode of the Larry Ohh Show. I got my co-host with me here again, as always.
It's John Phelps.
And I'm Larry Ohh. This is a podcast where we talk about everything FL Studio and music production related. We have a weekly giveaway, so stay tuned for that. There's going to be a keyword, key phrase somewhere in this episode. You got to drop down in the comments to win every single one of my FL courses. But today's episode, I wanted to do something special where we just dedicate one episode towards like one thing. And I had this idea last couple of days. We talk about the mixer. There's a lot to talk about with the mixer. There's some confusion with some people that don't know it, like don't know how to route it. There's a lot to do. Even though it doesn't look like extra complicated, there's a lot that you can do with this that can maybe just change the game for your entire workflow and just make you produce faster and better.
We got a new user in the chat.
It's the owner of this studio, the Boiler Room Studio, Merc. He's off camera right now, but he's on mic. I think I just turned your mic on.
Oh no,
what's up?
We
There
got a
he
Merc
is.
cam. We got the Merc cam going.
Yeah.
It looks
The
like
FL mixer hater.
We were just
a naysayer, dude.
we were just literally podcasting before the podcast. We're like, yo, we just gotta get it up and running. Because I was like, I said like, I think we should dedicate this episode to the mixer. And then he's like, yo, I hate that, man. Basically, he's like, yeah, I hate that mixer.
Well, you know how it started. I called Larry this weekend
Yeah.
because I had a song that I needed to mix, and they sent me the FL file.
Yeah.
So
First,
I'm
tell
like,
everybody that you're a Cubase guy.
yeah.
He uses Cubase in the studio, records, mixes, masters, everything with Cubase.
Yep.
So it's different.
Yeah. So then I call Larry. I'm like, listen, I need a crash course on how to export these stems.
Mm-hmm.
And the step after step after step, I was like, what the heck is going on? So
Yeah.
please explain.
Yeah, so like what happened when he hit me up, I was like out to lunch too. I was like, yo, but it'll be quick. And then he FaceTimed me quick, and I knew exactly what was going on because I knew like he doesn't use FL. So I knew somebody sent him a session and like, all right, he needs the stems quick. So I told him the first things first. And then as I'm explaining it to him, I'm like, damn, it is kind of like a decent amount of steps. But this is like,
If you don't
this
know,
is
yeah.
if you're just opening up a session that has nothing routed. It's almost like a completed session. Nobody routed anything. That's what it was pretty much like. Because when we're making beats, we're kind of like routing. I know I am anyway. I might not route everything right then and there, but every few minutes I'm like, all right, these three I didn't route yet. Boom, boom, boom. Let me route them to the mixer because I want to do something specific. I think low end needs to come out of this one, so let's send it over there. But the session that he had nothing. It was just a client, so it kind of looked like this, right? Nothing routed at all. So I'm like, all right, first of all, maybe it was set like this. The channel rack was set like this. I was like, all right, first things first, you have to route everything to the mixer. Easiest, fastest way to do it is to go to the channel rack because that's where everything lives. You have to go and select all. Make sure all is selected because if you have unsorted selected, you might think that, especially if you're not an FL user, that's everything that's in there. And you don't even know that this tab really exists and what it does, right? So coming at it from a beginner perspective, you have to select all. And then over here, everything that has a channel rack or a mixer track assigned to it will have a number here. So if nothing has a number, nothing's routed. And then if you want to do it real fast, you literally just like go to one of these that are highlighted and just double left click and everything will be highlighted. Don't touch anything in the channel rack because those will unselect or deselect. Then go over to the mixer, go to, if nothing's routed, just go to insert number 1, the next empty track that you got. And then just hit shift, control, and L. Now everything is routed. And then if you're in Merc's case where all you want to do is just route everything and get it out of FL so you can mix in a worse DAW like Cubase. Nah, I loved Cubase though, to be honest. I was a Cubase guy for a long time.
When I started started coming to the studio, you were starting in Cubase.
I was recording in it because FL wasn't really great at recording. But I would mix in FL.
Right.
I would do the opposite. I would record in Cubase and bounce everything out and mix in FL. But now that everything's routed here, you can actually like bounce everything in stems. You go to song mode, make sure everything's in song mode so that way it gets, everything in your playlist. You go to file, export, wave if you just want the stems, right? And then I would for me, I just go to the desktop. I would create a new folder, name it stems or whatever. Stems. So that way everything's going into that folder and then hit save here. And then all you do is you hit split mixer tracks here. And then if you want all your effects that are going on in the mixer, that's where enable insert effects is, and then enable master effects. So you could turn those on or off if you don't want those effects on, if there is any effects. So especially if you're mixing, if you want to mix it dry, Merc, so like you would Is that what you did to you? And you disabled these, right?
Yeah.
Okay. You were like, all right, I want all these tracks just completely dry so I can just mix them the way I mix.
Yep.
So yeah, if in that case, you would turn these two off so that way there's no plugins. You don't have to go into each individual track and turn every plugin off. It's very easy here. And then you just hit start and it takes a second. And then here's the thing. And I bet you realize this when it happens. So let me just do this just for the sake of doing it, right? And if I can find this folder real quick, because even though things go to the desktop on this computer, they don't go to the desktop. They're like in the folder of the desktop here. Let me see, where's that stems folder at? Stems. You probably ran into this, Merc, where you realized there was a file called current.
Yeah, being that when I do get stems the right way from FL users, there's always a current and a master track in there.
Yep, which the current is whatever is selected right? On the time of export. So if you're going into here and then now see track number 1 is selected. I don't know why they do this. I really don't. I don't understand why you would need this. You're basically getting a duplicated track, right? Yeah. So whatever's selected.
Maybe if you had like a click track and you selected that.
Yeah, but that's gonna go out if it's routed to the mixer anyway.
I don't know.
It'll be a duplicate.
I have no clue. Yeah.
So I don't really know. That's an old thing. That's always happened. Is for in the existence of FL that I've known it. And what I always do when I get these or when I do them myself is I just automatically delete the current one. I just literally just delete it and we're good to go. And then that's it. I can send those. I'll do that if I'm sending out stems. So that way the person just doesn't get confused. It doesn't double up whatever's in there. I'll delete that before I send them out too. But that was Merc's problem. He wanted to export the stems out of FL, and it has a lot to do with the mixer. And honestly, it has a lot to do with today's episode. Yeah. So after you bounced those out, you were good though, right?
Absolutely. Everything was good.
But we were talking about earlier is like, why is there so many steps? That's what Merc's thing was. Like, why is there so many steps in this? And I think that, I mean, if it was like a Cubase and you dropped something into track number 1, track number 2, I feel like it might limit you as far as FL goes. Any other DAW, like that's just the way they work. But I feel like if that was the case in FL, I feel like we'd be limited in a sense. So I think that's why they kind of leave it the way it is. But we also bounce the idea around that if maybe there was another export setting, right? Maybe there was another extra little bubble down here and it says route all unrouted tracks to the mixer. So if there's nothing routed to the mixer here, or there's just a handful that a new FL user, or maybe you just forgot, because what happens too is a lot of times is you're auditioning sounds and plugins and you don't use them, but they still stayed in the channel rack.
Right. And I would say even instead of it being a thing that you can toggle on and off in that menu, if there was just a pop-up, I think that would be really helpful for users.
Letting you know.
Just like, hey, there are these unrouted tracks. Do you want to bounce these as well?
Yeah.
That you know what I mean? Because when you export stems or split mixer tracks, that's implying that everything that you want is in a mixer track.
Yeah.
You might not know, you know what I'm saying? Going back to this idea of like, the more you know, the better. How many times have you like put an MP3 into your timeline and you know the tempo, so you line it up, you put it on the grid, and as the beat goes, it gets out of time. That's because for some reason, at the very beginning of an MP3 file,
a little bit of dead space.
There's a little bit of dead space, and you got to go in and trim that out. A little trick is if you got it in waveform, you don't have that. So anytime that you can export stems,
an original
do
wave,
it as a waveform.
Because sometimes people, I know.
If you make a wave of an MP3,
See, I know. And I know when somebody does that, and I'm like, yo, this was an MP3. No, it's a wave.
It's a wave now.
No, it's not. No, it's not.
So when you're making your stems, or if you're working with stems and the tempo's not lining up correctly, take a little bit of that, go all the way into the beginning of the track and look for that little dead space.
Or a lot of times you can go into here and you can hit trim on that, and it'll trim anything that's completely zero.
Because that used to like while me out when I would be like working with MP3s, and then I realized, MP3s just have this tiny little bit of dead space, and that's like the gem that you only really pick up like in the trenches. You only like figure that one out by doing it. But we in here, we in here with the mixer.
To get into the mixer, I mean, so we already discussed routing. We kind of talked about a couple of different things, kill two birds with one stone type of thing. that was one of the things I wanted to talk about in routing everything to the mixer. What that also does is that shortcut, highlighting everything, and that goes for anything as you're in your workflow too. Like, because I know how it is. Like, you don't want to just route everything. Sometimes you're in that moment and you're cooking up, and you haven't routed the last 5 drums that you put in there or the last couple of VSTs.
You're just in the vibe.
That'll still work for anything. So that's my favorite part about that shortcut, that Shift Control L, that it names it and it brings them in the order that they are in the channel rack. So if you're a little OCD with it, organize them in the channel rack first. You know, you can hit Shift and scroll your mouse wheel up and down, move things around. That's a nice little shortcut in the channel rack. Just hold Shift and scroll the mouse wheel up and down, and it'll move things around before you send them to the mixer. Then that way they'll come in the exact order that they are in the channel rack. As you can see, you know, they're listed 1 through 11 here. There was just the order, no specific order. But so now that brings me to the mixer. I went back to this view just because I wanted to show, you know, the difference between mixer views and the options that you get. I always opt for extra large, and I know it takes up a lot of space. And then once you start having a lot of mixer tracks, you lose. Then you have to start scrolling. But maybe it's my old age, or maybe it's but what it really is once I started with a dual monitor setup, I went to the extra large, and my entire right monitor is my mixer.
Yep.
Like, that monitor is mixer only, and it's full screened. So I have it over there, and I have it full screened pretty much like this, minus that side menu. So it's almost like this, which, imagine, you know, you have that on one side, it's fire. And the reason why I love the extra large mode is a couple of reasons. You have the stereo separation knob, which you do have in some of the other ones, but it's just more, you could tell that it's right under the track. This compact would always kind of like mess with me a little bit, and this compact 2, there's not a huge difference between compact and compact 2. Everything's just kind of smaller. You have the stereo separation knobs. What you don't have in these smaller views, even some of the wide views that you have in the extra large view, is you have a list of the plugins that you have on the tracks. So let's go to that other shortcut. Here's another little mixer gem that we talked about in one of the other episodes previously. Is you can right click on any track, and there's a bunch of templates and a bunch of pre-made mixer chains that you can go through and that you can use for different things. There's mastering in here. There's
you can
guitar
make your
stuff.
own.
So I want to show you, just for the simple fact that you could see the list of plugins here. And the cool thing is that even from here, you can right click and you can delete a plugin right from that list right there. And it just gives you a better visual. If you're not on that individual mixer track, you can still see what's in that track, what plugins are going on in that track.
And they got Sound Goodizer on that chain?
I forgot, what chain did I even choose? I don't even know.
Look at that. It says Sound Goodizer, I think, at the very bottom.
Yeah. I mean, if you use it the right way, Sound Goodizer gets a lot of hate.
Yes, it does.
But if you use it,
hate, yo.
if you, well, that's because people just put it on there and crank that one knob up, and you're
Sound Goodizer on.
You're compressing the crap out of everything. It's a
Right.
compressor, and it's Maximus. This is Maximus, by the way. If we talked about this
On the back end.
a long time ago, but on the back end of this is just 4 presets inside of Maximus. I think
so
even
if you
go
have Maximus and Sound Goodizer.
oh, bro, you're destroying
up.
it. I think there's even Sound Goodizer presets inside of Maximus. If I could be mistaken though. Oh, right here, A, B, C, D. These are the Sound Goodizer presets. So that just proves it right there. That's Maximizer. So I mean, it just depends on how you use it though. But just to go in, that's the main reason I love that extra large mode. That's the most fire view to me. For that reason, just the fact that everything's in here. I don't know who does it or who uses this feature right here. The view waveforms feature. Yeah, this view right here. I always just go to this normal view, but I don't know who uses this one. It's just always hard for me to tell. Maybe by the colors you can tell now, like what's kind of clipping. But I like to see the level. You know what I mean? Do you ever use that view?
No.
You can if you want. Use that view, but
to me the waveform or the bar just kind of makes a lot more sense. I can see like what
I know where 0
what's
is.
loud. Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? That's my main thing. Like I want to know where 0 is.
Right.
I can go by the colors. I could probably get used to that because essentially that color right there, that yellow, is what it is if you're going to that waveform view. But it's like the whole time. It looks cool. I think for a visualizer, if you're trying to make it look cool, it looks dope. But for mixing purposes, I wouldn't. I just stick with this. Better off just able to see 0. all the time. All right, so we can get into a couple other things. Oh, you know what I did by accident? I got rid of that. You know how long one time it took me to figure out how the hell to get that back? I clicked this by accident one time.
Yeah.
I was like, yo, where did all my inserts go? Bro, like I'm screwed. Where is all my inserts? It's just this little button right here. We got a couple little shortcuts. We all know, at this point, we should all know how to load up some plugins on here. You know, go to the insert, drop down. You have 10 slots per insert. Maybe some organizational skills in here. So let's say we want all of our instruments. There's some shortcuts that I use all the time. So say like if I didn't go into the channel rack and organize it first beforehand, what I'll do is I'll take the instruments. So like these 2 FL keys, I always like, I don't know about you, but I like all my instruments on the left. So like the musical instruments, and not just non-drums. I always like towards the left side of the mixer, and then drums, and then audio clips, like effects and all that kind of thing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I sort them out.
And then, so the way to do that very easily, especially if there's 2 together, let's just say if there's one by itself, I'll hold shift, scroll the mouse wheel over, it just moves it. Or you can right click if you don't have a mouse like this, and you can hit move left or right, or you could do alt left and right. Different ways to do the same thing. If you want to highlight,
arrow key it too, right?
Yeah. That's the alt and arrow key. So the alt, if you have it selected, you hit alt and then arrow key, move it.
Send it through.
Yep, you can move it wherever you want.
Multi-select, so if you got 2 FL keys together and you want to move them to the right.
How do you do it? Because there's probably a couple different ways.
So I have a mouse, and I'll double click and highlight both of them if they're next to each other, and then I'll do the arrow key to the right or the left wherever I want it. But I'll put like, similar to you, I'll put the instruments together, then the drums kind of like in their own little pocket. So that way they're all kind of hitting around the same, and you can get a good view.
Yep, I like that. Like I said, there's a couple different ways to do it.
You can color code different inserts that you got.
So you said like if you double click the mouse and hold it on the double, and then drag.
And then drag it.
You can drag and highlight multiple instruments at one time. In this case, we're just going to do these 2 and then move them over. So then you hit alt and left. When you highlight multiples like that and then hold shift and the alt key, I don't know if it works. It does work. So holding shift and scrolling the mouse wheel will still work if multiple tracks are highlighted. That'll still work. Would you say color coding? You can highlight all of them, or the other way to highlight a bunch in one shot is holding the control key and just click and drag. So it essentially just like in the playlist where you want to highlight a bunch of clips, control, click, drag, you highlight a bunch of clips there. Same idea. So if you want to color code these instruments, these are our like synths and pianos, you can highlight them all and then just hit change color. There was like a random color, right? Selection. Isn't there like some random color selection? Random color. There we go. Or if you want to color them all together, all those instruments will be red. All the instruments are red.
Also, if you want to bring all the like selected joints down in volume, you can select them all, and then as you adjust one volume, they'll all come down.
I love that, bro.
Yeah, so you can keep everything in context. Like if you like their relative volume to each other, but all together you want to bring it down in the mix.
Yeah,
that's one thing that you can use.
Yep.
I think that if you do that, if you multi-select, but then you use the mouse wheel to slide down, I think it only does one though.
You're right.
I don't know why that does
that too.
But it's just something to note.
Ooh, you see that just jumped like that too? There's a little glitch right there. Because
if you want to bring it back, you can right click it, right? Is that
see how it just jumped? Because I messed with it with the mouse wheel, and now I hit undo. Look at it, it's off. As soon as I click it, it goes off. But if I probably undo a couple more times,
right?
Boom, boom. Now it remembers that. That's weird. That might be a little glitch right there. Now it's good. Unselect it and select them again, and then you're good. But yeah, and then as I'm doing it, I got to talk about it. If I wanted to reset these volumes, say like I made a mistake and I didn't want to do that to any of these volumes. I want them to go right back up to 0. When I first started out, I'm like, I'm looking at the top left. Let me scroll this all the way up to 0.0. Or this is another reason why I like extra large. You can see the decibel level right underneath that panning knob. But then I would have to go all the way up and get it on 0.0. If you want to just reset anything in FL Studio back to 0, back to the way it is, any knob, any level, anything, Alt key, left click, zeroes it out. And that I'm telling you, it goes for anything, even inside here. Look at, I'm hitting Alt click. It's resetting every parameter anywhere. Level, reset everything.
And there is the option to just like right click the thing and reset.
Yep, there's that too.
There is that as well.
And Oh my God, there's just so many ways to do the same thing. If you click the mouse wheel, you know about that one?
Yes, sir.
Pop. If you just click that little mouse wheel button, if you have a button on your mouse wheel, some of them don't. Most of them do at this point now, it seems like. But yeah, so that's a nice little shortcut there as well. Let's
True.
say
if your mouse doesn't have a mouse wheel, it's probably from the 80s.
or like I was saying more like a
It
mouse
probably
wheel
got a
button.
roller wheel on the
Oh
bottom.
my God, imagine that.
Yo, we used to take those out in the computer lab.
Yeah.
We used to take the
Me too, bro. Yeah, if you don't
you
know.
could just unscrew the bottom.
Oh my God, you're bringing me back right now. I used to do the same exact thing. You
Fuck
take
with
that,
people's mice.
yeah, and then somebody goes up to the mouse and they're like, "Why is this mouse working?" And it seems a lot lighter right now for some reason. That's because that little 2-pound ball that was inside of it just got taken out. That thing was dangerous too, bro.
Bing.
Yeah, it was like
yeah.
a solid like rubber ball.
Yep, that's so funny.
I bet you the schools were like so happy when they got laser mouses.
But then you could put tape over the laser and
Let's say you want to make like a bus, a melody bus, and you want to group all your melodies together. Some people call it a bus. What do you call it, Merc? What do you call like when would you call it an auxiliary or a bus when you want to group like say all the instruments together?
A group channel.
A group channel?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, that's what it's called. Or you could just, I mean,
I've always
that's what it's
for some
called
reason
in
called
Cubase, but like in Pro Tools or whatever, Logic, it's an aux.
aux
Yeah.
or a bus. What?
Or a bus. Yeah.
All right. I've always just called it a bus, right? And I'll take all these
and it's
melodies.
a bus with 2 S's. Like, what's up with that?
Yeah,
Like,
but yeah, if it's a bus with 2 S's.
like, what's going on?
So let's say we want to make a melody bus. These 3 melodies, I want to group them together. I want to put EQ and compression together. I want to put the same things on them. Save CPU, save plugin usage. You can use any empty insert. So make sure you have an empty insert. I'm going to use any one of these. But first, I'm going to highlight all these 3, which any one of those shortcuts we just showed. Then I'm going to go over to insert 13. And then literally just right click on this arrow and hit route to this track only. So now what that does is it doesn't double the signal. If you hit route to this track, it makes it a sidechain. If you just click on that arrow, it becomes a sidechain. The signal is going from these 3 tracks to the master, and then these 3 tracks to that bus, and that bus is also going to the master. So if you follow along with that, a little bit of confusion right there, you're doubling the signal if you do it that way. When you choose route to this track only, it's completely disconnecting those 3 channels right there from the master. So it's not doubling that signal. It's sending them just to track or insert number 13, and then insert number 13 is going to the master. So then we can, from here, right click, rename it melody bus, 2 S's. If you want to color it, you color it, and then just hit enter. And then again, we move it. Scroll the mouse wheel and I move it. Or what I like to do when I create buses like this or vocal chains or anything, I'm a little OCD. Not too bad, but I want to like a little bit of organization. I'll right click on it. And I actually wish there was a shortcut for this, but there's not. And I'll hit dock to, and I'll dock it to the left. It'll create a border right here. And it'll dock it onto the left side. Now you can see all these 3 tracks are routed to the melody bus. And this melody bus, if you look at all these cables, is routed directly to the master. Now we don't have a doubled signal. Now anything we put on this melody bus is going to affect all 3 of those tracks equally. You want to put like an EQ on there. You're good to go. And then when you mute or solo any of these tracks, it also keeps the melody bus live. It doesn't mute that. Even if you do right click and that's like technically solo, FL Studio knows that you made a bus out of those, so it doesn't mute that melody bus, which is cool. Which I always thought was kind of smart because everything being like such a free for all, you would think that it would just like mute everything else, but it doesn't. That's how you would create a melody bus or a drum bus. I love those for just different effects. If I want to record, say, all the drums together for some sort of like intro, outro, bridge, something like that, I'll usually bust them all together and then just record that. Like, let's say if I wanted to record that melody bus, now you could just hit record here. We've talked about this before, so I won't dive too crazy into it. I would hit this record button and then hit Alt-R. And then if you want it on full song mode, which it'll get everything in the full song or just the pattern, you choose that there. Click start, renders it out. Make sure you deselect that arm button so that way you don't do that by mistake. I think that's going to lead me to this next part where we talked about melody buses and that sort of chaining. Now we could talk about like an auxiliary or a send, right? So like an effects send. I like to do reverb and delay sends. And again, like every track in the mixer is like created equally. So you can go to any empty track and then we'll just name this, say, reverb send, right? I spelled it wrong, but who cares? And so with sends, I like to put them and dock them to the right. That's just the way I like my sessions. I like my melody buses docked to the left with that border right there. Nice. And then I like my sends, my effects sends, to be docked to the right. And what that does is it allows you, like, no matter what, when you dock this to the right, it stays there. So like if you're scrolling through all your tracks, those sends and those buses will always be there.
Mm-hmm.
Anything that's important that you think you're going to be adjusting like a lot throughout a session, I would say dock it. And that could be anything. Maybe you want to dock your 808 to the right, to the left, because that 808 is just, it's tricky. You always want to get to that track. Dock it. But then the way that you would route a reverb send. So right now, let's say we want reverb on this sound right here. First, I'm going to go to that reverb send and actually put a reverb on it. There's Fruity Reverb 2 or whatever.
Right there.
If you're going to use a send, you have to make sure that this dry is all the way down, or else you'll get like a sort of a doubled up signal. And then I always reset this wet knob to be at 100. If you go all the way up, it's at 125. And then just create your reverb sound. Create like a nice big room, some decay, maybe some stereo separation. What I like to do sometimes is clean it up a little bit, just to put a EQ2 on there. Just clean up some lows.
And that's how you get a nice realistic sounding reverb too.
Yeah.
With the digital effects, a lot of times there's these artifacts in there that sound kind of unnatural and kind of out of control, especially within the context of all the instruments going on.
Mm-hmm.
So I always recommend putting an EQ after the reverb to sort of like make it sound more natural.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, and you can go as far as putting something else there too. If you felt like that reverb needed to be compressed a little bit, you can compress it.
You can do all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, you could do whatever you want. I mean, you could put anything in these sends. This isn't just for reverb. A lot of people get confused when I make these sends because I always go right to like reverb delay. I mean, those are the most popular effects, right? But you could do this with anything to get a cleaner sound. Reverb and delay sends and any kind of effects send in this way will get you a way cleaner sound, in my opinion, than dropping that effect right on. And it also saves CPU usage, because if you want the same exact reverb sound, just a little less or a little more on different instruments, this is the best way to go. You're dropping just one reverb, and then you could just go to every individual track and adjust the reverb accordingly. And I'll show you that exactly how to do that just right here. So right now, there's no reverb on this sound. Whatever there is, maybe from the plugin or however we did it, is there. But we want to add this reverb to it. Make sure you have that track highlighted, and then just go over to the arrow of the reverb send, and then just left click it. And now it's sent to that. And now you have a volume knob for how much of that reverb you want on that. So we start from 0, work up. We have a nice clean reverb.
And so when you select another instrument and you send it through to that same reverb send, and you left click that send, that's going to adjust how much of that reverb that instrument is getting.
Yep.
It's not the overall effect of the send. It's the effect on the instrument that you have sent through.
Yep. So now, like, this instrument is getting a lot less reverb than this instrument. You can see it right down there.
Boom.
And if you feel like overall the reverb sound needs to change, then you go back to the reverb send and adjust it. Maybe it needs more decay. So that way you get a little bit more, like,
maybe
room
it's a
sound
tiny,
out of that.
maybe it's a tiny triangle room now.
Yeah. And then if you want to create another reverb sound, and now 3 more instruments, but you want these 3 extra instruments to have a different reverb sound, create a new reverb send, and then just adjust that reverb differently.
Right.
And you could do that with anything. Essentially, that's what's happening with a vocal chain. It's the same idea. It's aside from like routing, making sure that it's route to this track only. If you're creating a vocal chain of any kind, you're doing it that way. The same way we created a melody bus. So think of it like that. If you want to create a vocal chain, it's the same idea as a melody bus. You want to make sure that you route all of your vocals, let's say, to that vocal chain and route to this track only. That's the biggest thing that a lot of people get confused about, is one of these 4 options, or just like left clicking that little arrow. That's where people get confused. And then once you do it, you kind of don't know what you did. And you're like, all right, so now I kind of have to just like start from scratch, or like people get confused. I used to get confused for starting out like that too. And then I don't ever adjust this level. Like when I have a melody bus or a vocal chain, I leave this level as is. I don't touch that.
Right.
If I want a different level going into the master, I just adjust this, you know, in all in all. I think
some people might not know this, but you can use the mixer to sidechain your instruments. Like for instance, sidechaining your sub basses to your kicks and things like that. I think that people might want to see a little bit of that.
Yeah, for sure. That's a big one.
That's a big one.
Let me just because I think this is a bass right here. Yeah, so and it has like the craziest effects chain because I just did that just to mess around. Another cool thing that I'm gonna show you right here, and I'm gonna do this because I want to reset this channel back to 0, like have nothing on it. You could go into every individual one and hit delete, but I'm lazy. I wish there was a shortcut, no shortcut, but you just right click, reset, selected track to default, hit OK. You can't undo it, so just hit OK. Now that's back to 0. We can just name this. I think this is just the 808. We'll name that the 808. I don't think we have a kick in here, so let me just go into this track and just create like a kick track real quick.
And you can copy and paste the bass rhythm. If you just go up in there, right click the bass, what the bass is doing, and then you could do it from the actual rack. So if you right click there, copy, and then paste into there, it'll copy and paste not only like the pattern, but also, you know, the melody line.
Yep.
And what I'll do is I'll bring those top ones, I'll just bring them down to that main like low note. And you can of course like fine tune the kick depending on like how much of a thing you're trying to make of it. But I'll just usually have them hit in like one note.
Yeah.
So
with
not,
kicks
like,
you want
around.
Yeah, with kicks you don't want to be like have them pitched around,
jumping around.
And also with kicks I'll make all those levels 100. And then more times than not, I mean, it depends. We're at like, you know, a really low octave right here. So let's go up. I'm just holding shift and our arrow up. So then we'll send this kick to a mixer track. This is another thing. If I want it to be over into the mixer and I want it to be named, I won't just like scroll a number in here. I'll hit this track button. This is something that goes unnoticed.
Right.
People don't know that little thing right there, like that's a button.
Underrated button right there.
A lot of people don't know that's a button. You click that button and it automatically sends it to the next empty track in the mixer and it names it. So that's, you know, that's another little shortcut fire trick right there. Again, because I'm a little OCD, I'm going to scroll and bring my kick right next to the 808. I just always have my 808 and then kick. So that way I just know in my head how I do the routing for the side chaining. The way I've always side chained is literally just highlight the kick, go over to the 808, hit sidechain to this track. I'll throw a limiter. I'll just go down here just in case I throw anything else on there. I'll go to the fruity limiter. I will go to compression, sidechain 1. It's the only thing. You can't even scroll up further than that right now. It knows that you just sidechain something to it. And then I'll bring this threshold down and the ratio up just to see like where we start getting some action. See right there. And that right there is going to show you exactly how much of that 808 it's clipping out for the kick. So if you want more, you bring the threshold down more. If you want a faster release, so you don't hear any kind of pulsating, you just hear, this is where you kind of really got to use your ear. But if you want to just completely just carve out the shape of the kick, and that's it. Mess around with the threshold and the release.
And the ratio.
And the ratio will bring it down further. The ratio will bring, and it will cut more of that out. Like this little triangle right here will come down further. See how much of that's coming down now? So now you're cutting even more of that out. But if you bring the release back, it's coming back faster. So I always leave that on, you know, the lowest 0. I just leave it when I'm side chaining, 0 it out. It's always the threshold, ratio, and release. That's all I'm messing with when side chaining with the limiter.
And so this is a trick that you can use for your 808s, your kicks, your sub bass. But this is also a good method if you're doing sort of like that signature lo-fi sound. But instead of it being between your kicks and your bass, you can do it between like your instrument line, bust that, and sidechain that to your snare. So when the snare hits, all those instruments get pulled back and swell back up.
That's a fire trick, bro.
To give it like that lo-fi feeling.
Hell yeah.
That we all know and love.
I think it's time for key phrase.
Ooh, I knew this was coming.
Yeah, it's been a while. I think
it's been a while.
I wanted to keep this episode shorter, but it's not. It doesn't seem like it's gonna be. So yeah. So today's keyword is you mix me. Key phrase. You mix me. Drop down you mix me in the comment section here on YouTube, and you'll be entered to win every single one of my FL Studio courses from youhelpme.com.
That's right.
I think because we're kind of like, you know, it's getting late, and I think time's up. To be honest, unfortunately, I wanted to do the key phrase earlier, but we didn't. I got wrapped up. So yeah, I think maybe
You
we
got
do a
all
part
mixed up.
2. Maybe we do a mixer episode part 2 at some point
Yeah.
because I know there's still even more to talk about. We just ran out of time today.
For sure.
But if you want us to dedicate another episode to another feature, plugin, window inside of FL Studio, let us know in the comment section down
Right.
below.
What's your choice?
Yeah.
You know?
John, you want to plug anything? Websites or socials?
Just, fuck with Kid on Instagram, ITS John Phelps. Got some shows coming up. Got some music coming out. That's it. Just keep tapping in.
Yep. And again, thank you. If you haven't already, please like, comment, subscribe, and as always, make sure to share this with a friend if you get me.